I would like to introduce to you now Professor Andrew Perkis. And Andrew Perkis holds a chair within media technology at NTNU in Trondheim, Norway. He's coordinating the Sense IT team and the lab running IDN, Interactive Digital Narratives. So he's running IDN, and it's related to projects and setting up direction and visions for new research within art and technology, as well as directions for innovations in immersive media technology experiences. So we are looking forward to the panel. You will introduce those who we don't know yet.
Thank you very much, and we are very happy to be here. And this is the closing panel. So I think I've talked to most of the panel. I will actually give a short presentation first, and then I'll invite you up on stage. So this closing session is sort of a little bit about what we have been talking about today. I think some of you understood everything. I've understood 80%, because I just understood about 40% of all the German presentations, but I can always hear the word Kunst. That's okay, I can know that. Forschung, I know that. So that's fine, that's okay. I think it's very good that we can speak our own language. So for the panel today, after my presentation, we will see if we can give some closing remarks. And I think the closing remark I would like to focus a bit on is not necessarily the augmented realities and Anthropocene, but maybe more the interdisciplinarity and maybe all the definitions we've had of artistic research today. They have been a little bit different. I think it's worth discussing them, and especially worth discussing the relationship between art, technology, and digital humanities, which is sort of where the interdisciplinary approach comes into play. So I will make a short presentation, then I'll invite the panel on stage, and we'll have their impression of what we've been talking about today. And then we'll have an open discussion with the panel, and of course with you here. And then just one slide on the way forward, because this is not an ending, it's a beginning. So we need to find out where we go from here. So of course, Matthias was kind enough to give the introduction of me, but I would like to just point out a few things. You know, I'm a professor at the Department of Electronic Systems. I'm in the Signal Processing Group at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Trondheim, Norway, which actually means that I identify myself as an engineer. So when we talk about art, technology and science, technology is usually in the engineering faculty. So I identify as an engineer. How many others in the room identify as engineers? 2 or 2.5. How many? You're only allowed to have one identity today, sorry. How many identify as an artist? It's actually the majority, right? How many identify as a pure scientist? So we're discussing art, technology, and science in a room that's dominated by artists. And this is quite common, because I have been doing this work for many, many, many years. It's extremely hard to attract the engineers to such discussions, which means it's hard to find the synergies between art and technology when you're just artists. It's extremely hard to discuss art and technology when you're only engineers. To have a truly interdisciplinary approach, the first thing you need to do is see if you can get them together in a room. And the issue is trust, language, workflows, processes, and just about everything we've been discussing today. So this is the problem. It's a little bit hard. As Matthias said, I work myself, my personal research is in interactive digital narratives, which means that the Anthropocene for me is a narrative And I would say that we need art, technology, and digital humanities to solve complexity. For me, the Anthropocene is complexity. Very, very difficult issues. So, you know, I work also very monodisciplinary. I do work on XR, immersive media, storytelling, quality. Interdisciplinary, I try to collaborate with other scientists, with other engineers, and with artists. So this is why I found this project very interesting, and this is why NTNU has committed to be part of this interesting voyage, if you want, this interesting travel towards augmented reality, Anthropocene, interdisciplinarity, and artistic research. We have come up with a slogan at my university through what Wendy was saying, art tech. Because my rector, which is the same as the president here of a university, actually acknowledged that artistic research is important. So we managed to get it into the main strategies of my university. And NTNU is the by far largest university in Norway. It's really, really much, much larger than any of the other universities in Norway, such as the University of Oslo, University of Bergen, etc. We are very large. They have 7 pillars in our main strategy, and one of them is artistic research. We came up with the slogan, arts as an enabling technology. I think this is the foundation for the artistic research that we should be discussing here today. You notice that arts is with a small a, not a capital A. Enabling technologies. We talk a lot about this in Norway. One of the enabling technologies in our society today is digitization. Make anything digital. Make the banking system digital, make parking digital, make an app for health. Everything, they seem to believe that digitization is good. It's an enabling technology. Electronics is an enabling technology. Quantum is an enabling technology. And arts is an enabling technology. That's the standpoint of where we are. So the opportunities of artistic research then becomes this exploring and inventing a new relationship between art, the humanities, and technology. That's a huge opportunity we have. It's a huge space which is not very well defined. Many people work on it, and many people feel it's interesting. Many people feel it's important, but it's fairly ill-defined. And we're not going to define it today, but definitely we are going to discuss it. Wow. Sorry, this is really going bananas. Artistic research, we need to talk about research methodologies. Any researcher knows that you have to have a methodology, and this methodology, between them you have a very, very specific humanistic research methodology, there's a scientific research methodology, there's a technical research methodology, and there's an artistic research methodology. Now these are not necessarily the same. They're not necessarily even overlapping. But by working with them together and seeing if it's possible to combine is where the strength is. So the co-location of artists and scientists in research projects, this is very much what we've been talking about today, I think. This is some way of doing artistic research. At my university, we actually have a formal PhD in artistic research. So you can become a PhD based on your practice. Involving the arts in scientific proposals as a cutting-edge feature? Well, this is because I'm an academic and I have a big team. One of my main tasks is to make sure I have funding for the team. So we need money. This gives us a true edge. And we have been very successful with this edge. Pilot projects with artists on open research data is also something that we would see and has possibilities. So then, art and technology. Now, art and technology, possibly from an artist's perspective, could of course be as simple as art using technology. And many of you are using digital technologies, analog technologies. So using technologies, this is one way of creating synergy between art and technology. You can also do art reflecting on technologies. Good, bad, in between. Of course, artists can invent new use cases for technologies, which is very often happening. Artistic ideas founded on the affordance of technology and the materiality focus. This is also something that very many people do. And the one I like the most is the artistic misuse and abuse of technologies. This is where the innovations takes place. This is where we create something new. And this has happened ever since technology in digital form was invented. Anything that you can do and abuse and misuse. Possibly then from the art and technology from the technology standpoint. Okay, technology can use art to gain new perspectives. This is very much done, and we use this quite often in our projects. Simple technology using art as dissemination. This has probably always been done throughout history. Technology looking at art practices, comparative workflows and analysis. This is when the true synergy comes into play, when we can use each other's workflows. And of course, you have the greening of it, the technology using art as a facelift. This is also possible. So with this short introduction, and I apologize for all this jumping around, I'd like the panelists to come up, and I'll see if I can introduce you. So the panelists here have nearly all of them been on stage, and they've all been introduced. So Wendy has been introduced, Matthias has been introduced, Silke has been introduced, Michael has been introduced, but we have one new participant, so I will do a short introduction to you. Ceenu leads the Human-Computer Interaction Lab at TUB, focusing on immersive extended reality systems and enhancing user interactions. Her research encompasses social acceptability, usable security and privacy, and mixed reality, aiming to make extended reality technologies more accessible and usable in co-located settings. Prior to her academic career, she served in various digital product management roles, bringing valuable industry experiences to her research endeavors. So panel, thank you very much for being willing to step up and sit. So I would like to hear from all of you, one at a time, on your perspective on artistic research, your perspective on art and technology, be it from the art side or the technology side. Based on that, we'll have a discussion and see if we can go forward. So I think I'll start with you, Ceenu, and we'll go that way.
Hello? It sounded like it was on. Okay, so I'm actually a computer scientist by nature, and I come from the technology side, is what I was getting at. But I come from the technology side with a human-centered focus. So we build technology with the human first. And with that, we are a very interdisciplinary research area. And I think some of the methodologies we use in order to build technology are very much based from artistic research. And one of the methodologies we, for example, use is speculative design. So when we think about how is technology going to be used in 10 years, or what is the type of technology that will be used in 10 years, we, for example, rely on these methodologies to provoke a creative, creative design processes, basically. So I think that's one corner where we come in from a technology perspective. Yeah.
Am I next?
Oh, you have one. Okay.
Am I next? We're not following in. Okay, that's fine. So first, maybe I'll just speak a little to artistic research, because at the TU, artistic research doesn't exist officially, nor at the UDK. So that's a quite interesting dilemma at our institution, that type of research. You can do artistic research at UDK or TU, but you just won't get a PhD for it. So that's something that is, I guess, holding back a deeper sort of engagement on the role of technology or interdisciplinarity in the area of art design, where I'm involved as a curator and organizer of events. More broadly on art and technology, I mean, art has always been involved in some fashion with technology. So that's not new, but I guess, with the digital turn, with the capabilities of AI, there's been a significant change and shift. So I think even though artists have been for centuries using or figuring out ways to use materials or more durable pigments or whatever mechanisms to create new works, or make it easier to create or reproduce new works, with the digital age, it's been so much more important that that artists have a bit more of an idea of what the capabilities are. And before 2 years ago, I would have said, if you're an artist, it would be worth your time to start to look into what coding can give. But then with the creation of ChatGPT, I would just say that it's worth looking into what prompt engineering is. So things have changed so rapidly, even in the last 2 years. But yeah, the question of technology will always be there for art. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Wendy?
For me, it's I already discussed it to you a while ago, that for me, artistic research. Hello? Yeah, artistic research for me is co-creation and inquiry. It's a process. So I don't need to say more because I did it already. Thank you.
Also genau, ich habe auch schon eigentlich im ersten Teil einiges darüber gesagt. Künstlerische Forschung ist für mich, wie Wendy auch gerade gesagt hat, ein Prozess, ein fortlaufender Prozess, erstmal auch mit Zwischenergebnissen zu betrachten, und das habe ich hier auch gezeigt oder zeige ich hier. Und bedeutet für mich eigentlich auch immer eine Offenheit und eine Zusammenarbeit. Und ja, ich denke, Ergebnis ist auch erstmal offen. Also das bedeutet für mich künstlerische Forschung. Ich nutze Technologie und vielleicht auch KI dann in Zukunft, weiß ich noch nicht. Danke.
Yeah, artistic research, my perspective is, I'm coming from the art, the big A. But there are artistic practices that can be very useful for research matters. I like your last point here, artistic misuse and abuse of technologies. I would add also this research on how push boundaries forward. So usually technology was invented for a certain purpose. Can I use that technology for different purpose, or can I use it for the very same purpose but under different circumstances? So my own work, for example, the work with the CNC machines, that are usually not created for organic forms, but can I use it for that? And what does change then if I use it for that? So these are, for me, important questions. And then, of course, questions around interdisciplinarity, working with scientists. And I think personally that artistic research does work best if it's founded in institutions.
Thank you. Would anyone of you sitting here like to comment and give your views on the artistic research, art and technology? So I think you all had inputs and definitions that I can relate to. I think they're very important. I'd like to then ask you one more question, and I think you have touched upon it, because it's all about processes and workflows. Processes and workflows for artistic research might be a combination of methods, or should they stick to methods? So the question is, do any of you have any suggestions on how we can foster this interdisciplinary need we have in artistic research? How do we get communities to share their research methods, and how do we get the humanistic, scientific, technical, and artistic communities together to discuss the research methods? And is there a specific research method for artistic research? It's a hard question. Does anyone want to give some input on that?
I'm not sure if there is a specific method for artistic research. I think there are many possible methods. And for me, for example, field research, for example, collection, archives, building up archives. But I think for me personally, most integrating the idea to create new methods on the basis of existing ones. And this is usually technology driven. So what is necessary to help that? Again, I think it would be good to have an artist in residence in each faculty. That would be great. Or to have, as NTNU has, a PhD program where artistic researchers can enter every faculty and use the know-how and also the technology these faculties can offer.
I agree with what Matthias said. As I already mentioned also a while ago, there's no clear-cut methodology or process. It depends on the audience, no? In my experience as collaborating with different people, I mean, we call it stakeholders. You can be a citizen, you can be an academic, or you can be from the industry. All of these people are speaking different languages. So you have to study the people. It's all about people, you know? You have to empathize with them. It's actually, the first process to collaborate with these people is actually to study them, to empathize. It's like you're creating a persona of what your user groups are like. And then from there, you design a strategy of how you can communicate with them. I think this is the really first step. The next thing you have to see is that, is there resources that I can use as an artist in order to expand my work? I will delimit from there. For example, I have people who were programmers in this, for example, I was in Laboral. You know, Laboral is a big laboratory. They have their own programmers, they have their own technicians. So from there, I will know what kind of artwork I can do? What are the limitations? So there's a programmer, okay, then I can do this, I can do that, and these are the things I can do. So these are the things that I will delimit. And then to speak to these guys, for example, okay, this is a useful person for me, like he's a good collaborator, but he doesn't understand my communication level. Then I would have to speak in, for example, he's another artist, but in a different field. Then I would have to use a visual form or another communication method. It's all about communication. The resources that you have, from there we delimit, or we limit what we can do. That's what
I just wanted to add to that because I totally agree with that sentiment. As a facilitator and curator at a technical university in which we have strong ties, obviously, to a University of the Arts, these sort of collaborations happen at the one-to-one level. It's not like beforehand we say, oh, we should have an artist working with fundamental physics in the area there, or in green chemistry, because it just doesn't work out that way. Normally, we come across an artist or we get an inquiry, and we get to know that person, and then they have particular interests, and then we search through the faculties for people that might be interested. And it's a hard thing to come across a scientist who really gets what's happening in the arts. And that's one of the biggest hurdles, is when you start talking about research, that's something that's very well defined in physics or chemistry. That there's a whole, it's a generation of new knowledge, it's publication, it's replicability of results. There's a whole method and that unfolds over many years. So they have their own idea of what research is, and it means conversations can get derailed quite quickly when both parties have different ideas about what this particular word means. So I think the idea of having, it's definitely about personnel. Let me say it this way: the most successful sort of projects that we've had have been because two particular personalities, one from science and one for arts, have come together and they've been able to understand either another perspective or a language, or they've been united through some sort of technology, whether it's like AI, machine learning, some other sort of digital method. And then that's made that sort of much more fruitful. But I totally agree with what you were saying there. Yeah.
Anyone else? Anyone from you?
It's just a thought. But all through the day, I had this idea. And when you ask what's maybe specifically an artistic way of researching, and you said purpose, I thought maybe for me this is quite important, that sometimes or mostly there's no purpose. So, and what I was hearing a lot today was there's this goal, and we want to, and we want people to. And for me, I mean, we can define art in many different ways, but I find it very attractive to define it as art pour l'art. So art is just for itself, so there has to be a purpose. So maybe this is one thing, and that's probably the most challenging to get this then in this whole university and then cluster definition stuff. Because if I'm just working on my artistic stuff, on my arts, then I need a clear head and not think about the outcome.
I just want to follow up on, because while you were chatting, I was thinking the way we work in human-centered design is actually very much, you know, we focus on the needs of each of the groups that are coming in to create technology together. And I was thinking from that sense, it's actually very similar. And you were saying earlier that you have a process where you iterate, and that's all the things we do actually in human-centered development, human-centered technology. And I was trying to think in the back of my head, what's really the difference then to artistic research, really? Because I'm finding more and more commonalities rather than differences. But I think I was like, okay, actually the purpose is probably, because we are very purpose-driven, so we need a very specific goal that we are creating technology for, even if all these different groups are coming together to create it. So that's, yeah, I think that's, without purpose we probably wouldn't get grants or build it. Yeah, so thank you for that.
It just came into my mind a text of an artist of Berlin, and he said art is a process with open ending. It's he says scientific way with open ending, and I think that's the difference. Maybe I'm not sure. I'm not very good in engineering, but it could be. I just want to ask if this open ending and the way of process are the main subjects in art. Well, that's
maybe the difference is, for me, less complex if I think about this dualism between, in research, between answering questions and raising questions. And artistic research, arts in general, can raise questions, but usually it's not like that you have a question beforehand and you do a proper research to find an answer to that specific question. So this is different in scientific research. Usually you have a question, precise, eine Forschungsfrage, and then you work on that precisely to find answers. So artistic research is more process-driven. So it's like a journey. You start with this journey methodically. You analyze a lot. You collect data. We've seen your slides, excellent slides that showed this aspect. But usually you don't know where your journey will lead you to. It's more about raising questions. And I think a good collaboration has to take this in consideration. But if done, it might be very fruitful, because these questions that comes up during this process, and it's an interdisciplinary process, can then be further worked on by the scientific part of this laboratory, let's put it that way.
Thank you very much. I think you have very good points, and I would just like to comment on Frauke, because art with no purpose is very close to my original definition of research. Because research should be driven by curiosity and shouldn't actually have any results as such. That's the true research. But unfortunately, there are barriers in our society today, and the barrier seems to be a true lack of funding for the true curiosity-based research, which actually has no objectives or aims or where we're going. But I think through history we've seen that the larger breakthroughs we've had have been curiosity-driven research, where you get minds together and let them do whatever they like because they want to do it and they need a motivation. Unfortunately, this kind of funding is a barrier, because the funding has become more towards these research methods which have a clear research question and actually you're supposed to or expected to reach a result. And that result will be an evolution. While we're often pointing to art or curiosity-driven to get a revolution, there's a huge difference between that. Evolutions are necessary for our society. They're really necessary for us to be able to evolve within these enabling technologies. But the revolutions, or the big steps, are more rare, and they should probably occur more often. I just have one last question before we'll go to the next, the way forward. And you've already said it, but be precise. What are the main barriers for the synergies between art, technology, and humanities? What's the main barriers, in your opinion? What do we need to solve? Which problems do we need to get rid of? Which walls do we need to tear down?
I don't know if I have a real answer to that, but I guess what I could contribute is some sort of anecdotes or things that come to us, which may answer or not answer your question. So a lot of the time, we get questions about, for example, a couple of weeks ago, we had green chemistry is a big area, NTNU. We've had a lot of grant money run into green chemistry. And so we were approached, the hybrid platform that is, approached to, with an idea that some scientists had that they wanted to do sort of some, a campaign where they, I think there's 8 or 12 very significant chemical reactions in the area of green chemistry. And they wanted to have an exhibition that would show these. And they, they came and showed us the equations or, the diagrams and stuff and had some very specific ideas how this should be sort of presented. And I just said to them, why don't you go to an advertising agency or interior designer or something? Because that's not the focus. And this happens a lot where in the sciences, when you speak about sort of artistic research or arts, it's more like, okay, well, that means my diagrams can look nicer, or I can have, sort of more aesthetics in presenting my data. And that's something we don't want to do, and we sort of, because what we're about is actually getting, as I said before, like two people, two personalities together to sort of start discussing about what the limits of knowledge are, what knowledge practices are, what knowledge is, how is it generated, what is ideation, all of those sort of fundamental areas that happen in both science and art, and just get on a level playing field where it's not, because in other cases we also have artists come to us and say, I've got this amazing idea, it will require some sort of huge engineering feat. And again, I say, well, we could go and do that, or we could go and talk to the engineering school and maybe get some students to do that. But again, it's just sort of solving one sort of small problem for you to put on your artwork. And there's nothing in itself wrong with that. But what the hybrid platform wants to do is collaborative work and research. And that is actually going down to the very deepest level and building something up together, rather than saying, okay, here's a task. As an artist, you can do this task. As an engineer, you can do this task. That's something that we want to avoid and actually get people to make things together. And that requires a different sort of, dialogue. So I guess, I don't know if that answered the question, but that's what I think.
So in our years of experience, when you say something like barriers to the collaboration or this kind of research, the main barrier that we saw is the interest and disinterest. There's interest in the idea that there should be a collaboration between the artists and the technologies or the scientists. When you say, oh, we are going to collaborate, I mean, it's very grand, everybody wants it. But when it comes to spending time, the motivation, there is a disinterest. That's the main thing, because of the process, you know, it takes so much time and effort, it takes so much time and energy. Scientists, technologists, or common people, they get disinterested. So this is also one main topic.
Silke?
Ja, ich denke, Vertrauen ist auch, Confidence ist auch noch ein wichtiger Punkt. Also das passt auch zu ihm eben. Wenn ich natürlich der anderen Partei nicht vertraue, dann kann es auch an der Stelle nicht weitergehen. Und dann erwarte ich ein bestimmtes Ergebnis, was ja schon in der Sache als solche zum Scheitern verurteilt ist, dass etwas Neues dabei rauskommen kann. Ja? Also deswegen finde ich Vertrauen und auch Neugier. Also Neugier finde ich immer den absolut wichtigsten Punkt noch. Wenn ich keine Neugier aufbringe, dann, also auch für die andere Seite oder für den anderen Bereich, dann kann auch dann nehme ich auch nichts an. So, das ist mein Punkt noch.
If I can just tell a little story. I was in a seminar. It was the XR labs here in Berlin. It was, by the way, an excellent forum. Many Berlin universities are eager to share their know-how in VR and AR techniques, so they share also their devices and their know-how. Okay, so you mentioned a room full of engineers, professors, scholars, different universities, and they just explained who they are, and then I needed to introduce myself, and I said, yeah, I'm the artist. Yeah, they were speechless. I myself was also speechless, so and therefore I understand, Wendy, what you explained. We need to learn how to communicate with each other, and it's a process, I think. This is one point. The second one, it was already touched here. I think we need to create room, space, so time, and this needs funding. I think these are two important aspects.
I would really like to point this out, because money is just a big, I don't know if it's an elephant in the room, but if we think about this whole project, and if I think about how much Matthias was working, and I mean, yeah, sure, sorry, yeah, Silke, and a lot of people, and Alex for the technique and all this stuff, and just personally, I would love to have done new stuff for this exhibition and find new partners and start something. I just couldn't, because I don't get any money doing this work. So, and maybe this is a little difference. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to find fundings at the universities, I know that, but maybe at least there's maybe some kind of a frame where you get some money to pay your rent, and then you of course, I know you have to find time then to think about artistic research and all this stuff, but there's just quite not enough for artists, and we just do this on top, you know. So, and I think that this could be a big relief, and maybe open some more doors to have just time and to really get into it.
Thank you very, very much for stealing my point, because I was listening to you, and you bring up all the traditional barriers, on the personal level, on your motivation because you want to do it, but you're sort of not touching the real barriers. I work a lot with the European Commission. We make policies on the issue. We make policies on how to include what we in the European Commission call the creative sector, cultural and creative sector and industries. That's where art belongs. And we've come up with two things that are the greatest barriers. Number one, the absolute number one, is funding. Number two is actually infrastructure. And that's a bit more complicated, because infrastructure is very much what drives European and global research. If you don't have the infrastructure, if you don't have the data, if you don't have possibilities of sharing, if you don't have the correct networks, you cannot do the research. But how do you define what is actually a infrastructure for the arts? It's a little hard, but we've started working on it through a European infrastructure project called Daria. Does anyone know Daria? Daria is for the digital humanities. It's been working for digital humanity infrastructures for a long time. This is typically libraries, those doing language, text analysis, etc., literature. But the A in Daria is actually arts. And I've recently joined the scientific board of Daria to look into, in their next strategy, what infrastructures for the arts are. It might be this time, space, motivation, it might be something like that. It might be archives, maybe. Archives are fairly well known from digital humanities. It might be, you know, how do you record document collections? How do you share documentation of collections without violating IP rights? How do you make sure that you can still get the funding but still share things like this? So I think these are there, but for sure, number one is funding. It's a fact, unfortunately, that funding within engineering and science is so much more than within arts and artistic research. It still is like this. So this brings us to the last point I would like to discuss, if I can get my... Where did it go? So parts of this panel was to discuss the way forward. So we've had a day. There's still more, of course. The exhibition will be here until the 27th of November. There's a book reading next week, so there's still more, but we can discuss the way forward. I think through the day and through the panel here, we have seen that we have motivated people. And for me, there are three pillars that are solid in themselves. VBK seems to be a solid pillar, which I've learned today and through working with Matthias and Silke through the curatorial. TUB and NTNU are involved. I am involved, Wendy is involved, because TUB and NTNU have a strategic partnership. This strategic partnership is at president level from our two universities. It's been running for approximately 15 years. I've had meetings this week, and it will be running for at least a few more years. We have the president of TUB and the rector of NTNU's support. So that means that the pillars TUB and NTNU are there. I think NTNU is very clear. TUB, we have represented, we have Ceenu, Michael. Professor Sebastian Möller could not be here. He is my counterpart in the strategic partnership. We have the pillars. I think we have the motivation. They're shown through the day. Of course, Matthias, Silke, Frauke, you've come up with the concept, and I think the concept is alive. I think the Anthropocene is more alive and more important than ever with the current geopolitical situation we're in. It's really not going away, it's just getting worse. So it's a very, very important concept. However, the big barrier we have here as well is funding. You know, we got some seed funding from the Willy-Brandt-Stiftung. Yeah. That's really not enough. It doesn't start to cover. It's just like handing out pocket money. It doesn't really. It helps, but it doesn't solve a problem. Unfortunately, I can say that NTNU don't have a lot of money these days, and I hear stories that TUB are not rolling in money either. So I think, and I don't think VBK are rolling in money to support this either. So we have pillars, motivation, a concept which is alive. Where should we find the funding? And I usually say, and I've done this throughout my career and my lab, that when we talk funding, let's talk real funding. Let's be ambitious. In my lab we have a saying, we like hairy, ambitious goals. Wendy has been the principal investigator, art director on a project for the water management sector. You know, Wendy and myself, we've seen more wastewater treatment plants than I ever thought I would see in my whole life. We've been working with them for 5 years in a large European project. We are 27 partners, 17 countries, and we received 25 million euros. That's a large project. Just imagine what we could do if someone gave us 25 million euros. It would be a good start, right? So we could work with that. It's not necessarily easy, but I think we need to be creative and curious and see if there are some ways. We can look for funding collectively or for the concept. Individually, we've heard a lot about artists in residence from Hybrid. NTNU have had a lot of success with artists in residence. The European Union have artists in residence programs. There are several artists in residence programs in Europe that could be of interest for individuals. We at NTNU have a PhD in artistic research, which might be interesting. They are very hard to get. And Norwegian PhDs are state employees, so they get a reasonable salary. We pay our PhD students approximately 45,000 euros per year, so it's a reasonable salary, sort of mid-average Norwegian salary. It's enough to live in Norway, for sure. So this is what I see as our platform. The question now is to the panel, how do we move this forward? Floor is open, and Matthias will go last. Ceenu, do you have any input? How should we move this forward? How do we get 25 million euros?
The realistic answer. I think if technology is the focus of the grant, it's realistic. I do think the artistic part can be a part of something bigger. So I think it's, I don't know who said it earlier, it's probably more like, I think you said it, how can we include the artistic part in the type of grants we write typically in technology or in computer science research. Yeah, I don't have a clear answer, but I think it's changing more the mindset about how to include that kind of work. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I do very applied research, but at the end of the day, even in industry and everything, the artistic part, whether we call them designers or whatever the name that group of people have, they're also very much involved, right, in whatever product we're creating, whatever technology we're creating. So it only makes sense to also include that in part of the grants that we're writing for technology, even in the fundamental research part. Yeah.
I would think the same. I mean, we push through with maybe the proposals or look for calls and yeah.
Michael, do you have 25 million euros?
No, but maybe you should invest in crypto or like, you know, create a DAO. Because we thought about doing this actually seriously at the Berlin Science Gallery. We considered just, yeah, creating a DAO, autonomous organization, and offering tokens. And yeah, a whole ecosystem, because actually it's not that hard to write a blockchain. You can just fork Ethereum, and then you've got smart contracts, and yeah, you can make 25 million. But outside of that, yeah, funding is a huge issue in the university. Okay, there's, at least in the DFG, like the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft, the the body that gives them the most amount of sort of research. And NTNU gets tens of millions of euros from the DFG and from other sources. For the last 20 years, the DFG have, said, interdisciplinarity and, these sort of cross-disciplinary projects are sort of super to have. We all should be turning towards that sort of interdisciplinarity and working across disciplines. But of course, when it comes to assessing these grants, you find especially at the high-level grants for clusters of excellence or whatever, you have panels of people who aren't at all interdisciplinary and know only their own discipline, and they're there to sort of give you input about how interdisciplinary you're thinking. So from my opinion, the scientific funding model is broken. It is focused on 3 or 4 year cycles, where the whole idea is to get as many papers out as possible so you can get a higher H index and therefore write another grant in 3 years, or get your Mitarbeiter on their next contract. So it's a horrible cycle, and as you said before, there's no space for pure blue sky research. Having said that, another sort of approach we found that we were thinking about trying to implement is, because there's so much DFG and Drittmittel money coming in, at least to our university. Our university is trying to focus more on science communication. And we had the idea that, if there is so much sort of these research groups popping up, feeding off this research money pool, and each of them need to address this question of accountability, open access, science communication. That might be a way to sort of implement sort of artistic research or introduce sort of artists into those sort of research groups. But once you start doing that, then again you go back to the problem with, that's the artists, they're here just to sort of communicate what we really did, the important stuff. And so that sort of breaks down. So I think, I don't have any really clear answers to funding, but I know that something needs to change, and that's why, as crazy as it sounds, I think crypto might change things like that. That's it.
Ich habe ehrlich gesagt keine Antwort auf diese Frage. Weiß ich nicht, wenn es irgendwie eine Möglichkeit geben würde. Also ich glaube, dass einzelne Anstrengungen nicht so erfolgversprechend sind, sondern auch, dass man auch an dieser Stelle zusammenarbeiten muss. Das ist meine Überzeugung, aber eine wirkliche Antwort habe ich nicht auf die Frage.
I don't have an answer either. I thought you may have an answer, Andrew. But
I do. I just want to hear your answer first.
Okay. But for the others, we have now established contacts to the Norwegian embassy here in Berlin. So we may have a chat with the Norwegian embassy in the next weeks and months. Maybe they're interested to fund this interdisciplinary project of Norwegian and German players. That might be an idea. And you mentioned European money, but I'm no expert in this field.
Thank you very much. So to close this panel, I think we have some opportunities which are new and are coming up now. The European Commission have just funded a new KIC, a new competence center on the cultural and creative sector in industries. We are in the process of signing the grant with the European Commission now, and these EIT KICs are for the creative and cultural sector and industry. They will have specific calls for artists, artistic research, artistic projects. They will be coming. So I promise I will keep an eye, and when they come I will involve you so we can apply for money. These are meant for small entities, so it's not these 70-page huge European grant applications. They're much simpler. They will come, I'm pretty sure. I've been promised that the grant with the European Commission will be signed by December. These are different from the ordinary finance instruments. These kicks, they last usually 2 times 10 years, so they're very long term. They also give very short money and long money, so that's a possibility. The European Commission are also setting out their wish to establish a partnership within virtual worlds. Virtual worlds encompasses everything that we have been talking about today with the augmented reality. There is an opportunity. We should also be active there to see who wins. Someone in Europe will win the bid, and then out of magic there will be a European Association for Virtual Worlds. We just need to be there. NTNU are already core partners in the KIC, so I get all the information from there. And for the virtual worlds, we just need to keep our eyes open, ears sharp, and see what comes about. And also for the individual, we will monitor. I think today in the symposium we have made a good start. Now we just need to work hard and continue. And with this, I'd like to close the panel and say I really hope I see all of you again next year. Thank you very much.